What the president is saying is, you know, the Constitution of the United States and due process, that's just inconvenient.
That's not how any of this works in these United States. 5 out of the 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights have to do with fair trials and the judicial system.
Well, things are getting rather interesting. Senator Van Hollen has been appearing on television nearly every single day since his appearance from El Salvador to try and free Mr. Kilmar from prison. We also have Mr. Kilmar's attorney now appearing on television to try and talk about the situation. Also, the senator has finally been approached with the question we have all been asking.
Well, what happened to Rachel Morin was awful. And what happened to the Morin family, it should not happen to any family in America.
And the question was about Miss Morin losing her daughter. I think you guys remember Miss Morin went on national television and told the whole world, hey, while my senator is down in El Salvador, he never contacted me or my family about losing my daughter to an illegal immigrant from El Salvador. We'll get into all of this, but let's start with this clip.
Response to the president saying it's not realistic to give everyone he wants to deport a trial.
Well, Caitlin, it's good to be with you. What the president is saying is, you know, the Constitution of the United States and due process, that's just inconvenient. So I'm going to ignore it. That is a very dangerous path for all of America, because this case is not just about one man, Abrego Garcia. Because if they can trample his rights, as the president's talking about doing, then they can trample the rights of everyone who lives in America.
All right, so the wording used by Senator Van Hollen, all of America, dangerous path. These are the buzzwords Senator Van Hollen and other Democrats are using in the case of Mr. Kilmar, and how Donald Trump, if he's willing to go against the court system, who knows what he will do to the rest of the United States. But let's see how the senator responds to these accusations.
Now, she's obviously a grieving parent who has been through something that is no short of horrific. But what would you say to Miss Morin if you saw her in person?
Well, what happened to Rachel Morin was awful. And what happened to the Morin family, it should not happen to any family in America. I mean, nobody should have to suffer like that. I cannot imagine the pain of losing a child. The killer was recently convicted in a court of law. And that's what we use our courts for, to punish the guilty, but also to provide due process for those who are not guilty or have not committed crimes. And so...
All right, hold on. The senator just used the word recently. You want to know how recent it was since this court case has been resolved? April 15th. The word recent is an understatement. And furthermore, the case lasted 10 months from start to finish, investigation to prosecution. So during this whole time, the senator never even reached out to Miss Morin, which is why people have quite the issue that this is all being brought up now because he had to go all the way down to El Salvador to help a non-citizen. Let us continue.
The issue in this other case, of course, relates to those due process rights. So I was heartened by the fact that Rachel's killer was convicted. And so, the issue here, as you well know, is the fact that in this other case, the other person, Abrego Garcia's rights, constitutional rights, needs to be respected. It's in courts of law that we punish the guilty, but also provide people with their rights.
And Senator, can I ask you?
And I should say at the time, I did say at the time how horrible it was and how my heart went out to the Morin family. And I also, when the conviction came down, said this is exactly right. Someone who's guilty needs to be punished.
Senator Chris Van Hollen, thank you for your time tonight.
Now, 2 observations. Number 1, I think this is the first time I've actually seen Senator Van Hollen really mumble and stumble through an interview, trying to really tie this all back together to the court system, how Donald Trump has taken advantage of the court system, which is why Abrego needs to be let free. But also this part right here.
That we punish the guilty, but also provide people with their rights.
Now, I don't know if Senator Van Hollen meant to say that, but as far as being guilty, even Mr. Kilmer has admitted in the court documents he came into the country illegally. You can take from that what you want, but he even said in his own statements, you need to punish the guilty. Let us continue.
We've spoken to the administration about how they are not making the argument about MS-13 in court, but you told my colleague Dana Bash yesterday that you did not ask Abrego Garcia whether or not he's actually in MS-13. You said you know what his answer is. But how do you know if you did not ask him?
Well, because I know what he's said many times in court, and that's the proper forum for debating this. And as we know, the federal district court judge in this case said, and I brought it with me again, and I'm going to read it, no evidence linking Abrego Garcia to MS-13 or to any terrorist activity, period. That has been what Abrego Garcia has been telling the court. And I would ask you, Caitlin, really, if I'd come back and said, oh, I asked him if he was an MS-13 and he said, no, he wasn't. I mean, right? The whole point is this is a conversation that's supposed to happen in court.
Now, I already know what everyone is thinking. Why would he admit to being a part of MS-13? And also, does anybody else find it just a bit odd that this senator did not ask him the question down in El Salvador? I mean, it's just a weird thing to not ask somebody, considering this is what it's all riding on. If he's not a part of MS-13, boy, are these guys going to be able to destroy the Trump administration in court. Because if he's not a designated terror member, that means everything Donald Trump is doing, being able to invoke his right to deport people immediately, they're going to be in big trouble. So that is why even Caitlin Collins, which I know a lot of people are not the biggest fans of her, that is why she's even like, why wouldn't you ask him that question? And then to appeal to the court system, because nobody's ever lied in court. I'm just going to leave it at that. I do find it rather fascinating, but if you want to leave your opinions down below, I'd love to read your comments.
The other day. Out front tonight, Simon Sandoval-Moshenberg, the attorney for Kilmer Abrego Garcia. And Simon, I appreciate talking to you again. And, you know, here we are now in this moment where the White House press secretary, who had said there was an administrative error and a clerical error at the beginning, that's what they said always was the reason that he was deported, and that's why they weren't defying a court order by not turning it around. It was a mistake. But now they say there was no mistake made in the deportation of your client. No mistake made. So what do you take away from this?
Yeah, they've said all kinds of crazy stuff from the White House press room. But in court, in the actual filings, they've never backed down from the initial statement that this was a mistake. And that statement was made not by the initial Department of Justice lawyer who was subsequently fired. It was made by an ICE district director in a sworn affidavit. So she can say whatever she wants from the press podium, but in court, they've admitted that this is a mistake under oath.
Right, and they haven't made any efforts to change that. I guess that's the important thing. All right, so the rhetoric, press rhetoric versus the legal reality, important to understand. Now, they do say, obviously, they maintain from the beginning that your client is a violent gang member and shouldn't be in the United States. They then also brought up the 2021 protective order that his wife put out against him. She ultimately did not pursue that, but there was a protective order. My colleague Dana Bash asked Senator Van Hollen, right, who met with Abrego Garcia over the weekend. She asked him about whether he talked to Abrego Garcia about the allegations against him, both gang and domestic abuse. Here's how the exchange went.
Can you say with absolute certainty that he is not, nor has he ever been a member of the MS-13 gang? And did you ask him point blank?
Well, Dana, what Donald Trump is trying to do here is change the subject.
Since you were the one person to have met with him, and since this is a thing, you say on social media, it's what we hear from Donald Trump and Republicans every day, all day long, you didn't ask him?
I didn't ask him that because I know what his answer is.
He also said at one point, you know, he's not defending the person, you know, he's defending he's not here to champion the person, he's here to champion the process and to champion rights. I'm just curious from your perspective, Simon, do you think it's a problem that Senator Van Hollen, who is right now the most prominent, you know, publicly elected official speaking out on his behalf, who went down there, who met with him, that he is not able to directly answer these questions?
I don't think it's a problem because this is exactly why we need to bring him back and give him a fair trial. Kilmar Abrego Garcia had a 2-day-long trial in 2019. He won that trial. The immigration judge granted him protection, and the government, the Trump administration at the time, decided not to appeal that case. And that's why he was released from detention. That's why he was given a work permit. And that's why he's been allowed to, live here and work here legally ever since. If the Trump administration is so confident that they've got this guy dead to rights, bring him back, put him on trial. That's what we do, right? I mean, if we do that all the time with Colombian drug lords in Colombian prisons, Mexican cartel leaders in Mexican prisons. If you think he's committing crimes against the United States, bring him back and put him on trial.
So when Trump posts, and I quote him, "We cannot give everyone a trial because to do so would take, without exaggeration, 200 years." What's your response to that, Simon?
Alright, so as you can see, the messaging really seems to be all over the place as far as what exactly is the end goal. It looks like they want to try and get Kilmar back into the United States, but the only issue is they are still not addressing the main concern everyone has. He has already admitted to being an illegal immigrant, and this is why the Trump administration keeps saying this was not a mistake. Yes, we know there were some errors in the process, but none of this was a mistake, and not only that, we legally have the right to deport someone who is an illegal citizen. So again, I don't know what the end goal here is. I have said or made a theory, I wouldn't be surprised if the Trump administration flies him back into the United States, Mr. Kilmar, just to fly him back somewhere else.
Could that be a Logan Act violation? Because he in no way, shape, or form, even though he's in the U.S. government, he did not have the approval of the U.S. government to go down there and negotiate the release of a prisoner.
It's very possible, but at something that's even bigger than that is he looks like an utter fool. Because now the information's coming out about this guy. Obviously, yes, he was in the country illegal. His wife was saying he was an abusive person. He was hanging out with MS-13 gang members when he got picked up, and he's down in El Salvador trying to negotiate a release. This is the buffoonery of the Democratic left. It's the reason they were boat raced last November. It's the reason they will continue to lose. How about a U.S. senator actually stand up for the American people, the rule of law, actually securing our borders and sending people home who do not belong in our country? I wish he would spend his time doing that as opposed to going down to El Salvador to prove to all Americans that he's a fool.
Absolutely. Congressman Byron Donalds, great to see you. Thanks for being.
And I've talked about this before, we are getting dangerously close to the Logan Act. I would not be surprised if there are members of government, especially conservatives in the Trump team, looking at the possibility of using the Logan Act. Basically, you cannot be a member of government or an American citizen, go to other countries, and try and persuade them to do things on behalf of America if the trip is not sanctioned. And verbatim, that is kind of what's happening right now. Go ahead and look into the Logan Act because this is not a good look for Democrats right now. Anyway, thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for everything. There is still a lot more to this story. I mean, this is happening every single day at this point. And I'm sure we're going to see more and more Democrats down in El Salvador. And who knows, maybe we'll see some conservatives down there as well. Thank you guys for everything. God bless, and we'll see you all later.